Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's daily recap. I'm Evan Lazarus, CEO of T3 Live, and I'm going to recap today's price action for you to the best that I can. I did the morning call this morning, and I talked about the market for a few minutes. I referenced this rising trend line. I referenced, a couple of possibilities as to where the market may go next, what it may do, more or less in terms of price action. And I talked about buying new highs and a couple of different points that I think were, seen in today's market. If you go back and you look at, and again, I'll give a kind of a quick recap. If you go back and you look at, these periods where the market kind of found resistance. Let me change the color here. You go back and you look at these time periods where the market kind of bumped up into some of these resistance levels. The one thing you see in here is very choppy price action. We went from red to green to red to green to up to down to up to down. And I suspect that in this general zone, we may get the same type of price action. And that could last for days, weeks, who knows. And we could see a new price spike high followed by, a turn down. So, as I said this morning, and I still, stand by it, the market still continues to act relatively well from an index perspective, sitting here at new highs and gapping down this morning and rallying back. But from a stock perspective, it's definitely let's say a more difficult trade, and I think it's a much more of a stock selective tape than it was several weeks ago, even several months ago, to that matter. As we sit at new all-time highs, and I can go out to a weekly time frame, this rally is now, this rally, or the rally is several years at this point. But this last few weeks, we're now into the fifth straight up week, it just seems to me like I'm seeing fewer and fewer symbols really, pick up that upside momentum, and it seems like a choppier overall trade. Again, that's my perspective, my point of view. Obviously, a market's filled with, lots of opinions, and, for every up, there's a down, and vice versa. So I'm sure there's going to be many that are sitting here watching this saying, what's he talking about? Everything I see is going up. So it is a matter of how you perceive things to some extent. Some of the stocks that I look at for leadership purposes, sometimes for trading purposes, there are some stocks that act very, very well. Apple, being I'd say the number one, stock on the board in terms of, breakouts, follow through, and this sort of desire for higher prices. Now, as I mentioned this morning, I would be very, very careful about, this area up here. We rallied, we came off that level. I would watch to see how price reacts into that 117 price zone, maybe even as early as tomorrow. But we've come, a substantial distance in a relatively short amount of time. And markets, and I'm not saying that we've seen a top here, by no means am I saying that. But what I'm saying is, things can get a little tougher, in these types of environments where, as much as it continues to look good, you might see, a couple of days of more sideways price action. So be careful, for those that are actively engaged, trading intraday and kind of sitting and watching the markets day in, day out from open to close, make sure you approach your trades with a level of perspective and a smart game plan. There are some stocks that I think are worth looking at. Some of them are, relatively strong. Some of them are not as strong. Some of the leadership we've seen, I say leadership, this, BABA, the stock that, was a momentum, short-term trader's dream. It just, broke out of this, let's say this 1 month of consolidation post-IPO and just sprinted, straight up to about 120, has found some resistance in this area. We broke basically 114, 115 a couple days ago, and now, starting to get choppier intraday. So some of these trades have definitely, kind of lost their push, and could be pullbacks for higher prices, could be, something more substantial. Stocks like G Pro is a good example of a stock that broke out of a base, had a big, huge momentum run, and has now become clearly a much different trade. You can see, finding that resistance here at around 88, 89, and today, rejection occurring yesterday again. You can see a couple of touches in this general zone here, and here, and all within a matter of 2 days. What took 5 or 6 days to go up unravels in a day, and basically 2 days. So you got to be very, very careful in this tape, and I think this is a great, just from an example standpoint, the nature of what's happening. I think overall right now, stocks that we've seen take this market higher for several years at this point are certainly not taking it higher, with the exception of just a couple. Google, another one that sort of can't get out of its own way right now. Credit card stocks post earnings had huge runs. We saw a shallow pullback. Here's MasterCard. So some of these stocks could be setting up for further gains. Here's Visa, a nice basing pattern here in Visa. So not to say there's not opportunity. There's a ton of opportunity, at least from my vantage point. And I think there's opportunity on both sides of the trading table right now, both long and short. We've seen some weakness in energy and oil names, and those stocks have clearly underperformed and continue to underperform. And stocks that you probably maybe have never heard of. Here's a trade that we currently have long in off the charts, which is UFS. So there are these diamonds in the rough, and I think it's a great time to be a trader, whether you're day trading or swing trading or you're actively engaged, because there is lots of opportunity out there, and you got to ask yourself the question. I say it every time I do a morning call or recap. I said, are you getting the results you seek out of trading? If you are spending your time watching the markets, engaged in the markets, committing capital and risk to the markets, are you getting the return for that time and effort spent? And if you are, that's great. You're doing something very, very right. But if you're not, you need to figure out what the disconnect is, because if you don't, if you're relying on hoping, wishing, and praying, as I've said, several times, it's going to be a very, very rocky road, whether it's a bull market or a bear market or anything in between. So make sure you're thinking about what your plan is, and you're engaged in your plan. There are so many products that we have and services and really great insight that we provide, on a daily basis. Jeff Cooper, myself, Scott Redler, the VTF. I mean, there's just a ton of information that we serve up every day to try to make what seems like, sometimes it seems, a bit of chaos into something that is sensible. And how you interpret what we say and what you do with our information, ultimately is designed to help you get better results. So, ask yourself the question, are you getting what it is you seek? And if not, how do you intend to fix that problem? I'm going to keep it there. I'm going to keep it, nice and short for sake of the fact that I'm going to most likely be doing a morning call tomorrow, and we'll dive into some new trade ideas and look at some of the indexes tomorrow morning. We'll look at the S&Ps, the Dow, the NASDAQ, the Russell, and then we'll look at a couple of potential trade setups as well. So everybody have a nice night, and I will talk to you in the morning.